through. Okay, sweet. We've got a couple more people rolling in, but let's kick things off. Happy Monday, everyone. Hope you're having a good week so far. We're going to be talking about your brand and how to present it. As always with these webinars, if you've got any questions, pop them down into the chat. I'll keep an eye on that. I'm going to mute myself because I've got a class going on the other side of the wall. But then I'll just interrupt at a suitable point, ask the question, and we'll go from there. How's that sound?
Perfect.
Fantastic. Cool. Over to you, Belly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gareth. Hi everyone. I'll put the presentation on the big screen. And yeah, as Gareth says, I'm hoping that I definitely won't take the full hour on this presentation because I think that everybody in the call will probably have as many ideas and inputs as I do, especially Gareth and Andy, actually. So I want it to kind of be a discussion and Q&A as much as a presentation. And I'll caveat a little bit. I'm Jeannie Ivanoff. I'll introduce myself. I'm the owner of Newbury CrossFit, which is a gym, an affiliate of about 150 members in Newbury in Berkshire, so about 40 miles west of London. I'm from the north originally, and I've been a coach at Newbury CrossFit for about 7 years, head coach for 4, but I only bought the gym and took over on the 1st of August last year. So I've likely got less experience running a CrossFit affiliate and a small business brand than anybody on the call. The reason that I offered to facilitate this was because for nearly 20 years, showing my age, before I bought the gym, I was a marketer and most latterly a marketing and brand director in some fairly large organizations. That's not the same as running a CrossFit gym. Running a CrossFit gym and building that brand is much harder than running multi-million pound businesses. And I mean that completely sincerely. But it does have some transferable lessons. And I think they're probably, some of them might be helpful no matter what stage you're at. But really, that's my kind of this disclaimer to say, let's definitely have a discussion at the end. And please do chip in, not just with questions, but with ideas, thoughts, contradictions. What I'd like to do is make sure everybody leaves with some ideas and some practical things they can perhaps take away that might help them to grow over the next 12, 18, 24 months. So just very quickly, I pulled a few brands off the internet. These are actually the 9 most recognized brands in the UK this year, which is slightly depressing because none of them are British brands. But there we go. That's just the nature of big global brands. And I'm sure that if I asked you to name them, you would almost 100% certainly be able to name all of them. And also, interestingly, there are 2 very large sports brands on there as well, which just demonstrates the power of the fitness industry when it comes to marketing. So, a few of them there I've just picked out to just highlight the sort of investment that brands make, that companies make in their brands every single year. So we're talking billions of dollar investment. These figures aren't split between brand and other types of marketing and different channels, but you can see a significant portion would be spent solely on brand and advertising. And clearly, I think my brand budget this year will be about £580. So there's a definite difference in our ability to scale as CrossFit gyms and as small businesses than these big guys. And I don't think any of us are expecting to see our brands on billboards in the towns that we operate, which actually is an interesting point, right? Because one challenge I think that CrossFit gyms have is that generally they tend to be tucked away on industrial estates or in dark corners of towns. They don't tend to be on high streets. So there's an immediate challenge with visibility when it comes to looking at physical advertising and brand versus digital, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So we're not going to be spending the hundreds of millions that these brands do to be front of mind. But the point I wanted to make really is that the reason that these brands invest is because they need two things. They need recognition, particularly in the audiences that they want to sell to, which are very broad and global for them. But they also want to build trust. And on a local scale, it's possible to get really crystal clear and consistent with your brand and to build those same levels of trust, which is really what we're after, again, in my opinion, as CrossFit affiliates. And that really matters. And the reason I'm so passionate about brand is because it goes way beyond a logo, especially for an affiliate in a community and an industry where passion and self-identity and everything that goes with that is so critical to what you're selling and what you're buying. So brand is about the experience someone has from the first time they contact you, the first time they see you on Instagram, the first time they reach out with an email, to the first class that they come to being with you for 10 years or 2 years or however long it might be that they stay as a member. It's a huge reflection of you and your team, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end as well. And that's something that I'd really like to hear from everyone about, especially maybe Andy running a much larger affiliate than I do. And also, it's the beating heart of your business and your community. So it underpins everything that you do. And it really matters. So a strong brand genuinely drives growth. So first of all, just being consistent with your brand through all your channels and in your gym can boost recognition really significantly in the audiences that you touch. And companies with consistent branding they do beat others when it comes to actual revenue and growth year on year. So that consistency thing is super important. And again, we'll come back to that. For small businesses as well, I wanted to touch on this because I think it's much, much more difficult as a small business to invest in your brand for a whole variety of reasons. You may not have the expertise, you probably don't have the budget, and it's much harder to professionalize, especially when you're just starting out. This stat horrified me. 60% of small businesses invest in a professional logo. That means 4 out of 10 small businesses don't even spend money on having a nice professional, consistent logo. I doubt that's true of many CrossFit gyms. I think probably we're talking about small businesses in other industries. But nonetheless, another 27% don't have a website. Again, I can't imagine that any of us don't have a website, but it just kind of highlights how a lot of small businesses aren't able to or aren't confident in investing in their brand and marketing strategy. They don't think it's working either, but it's clearly the most important facet of driving top of the funnel. So how people find you, where they find you, leads into your business and then down. So again, hopefully today just enables us to all take away a few new ideas on how we can make it a competitive differentiator.
So, Jeannie, just to stop you there, if you can go back one slide, please.
Yeah, sure.
Just on the last one, the competitive differentiator for small businesses, right? Let's
Yeah.
just a runner. There are a number of affiliates that still don't have a website. So, could you tell me why that 27% needs to have one, please?
Yeah, of course. So that is interesting. So I guess primarily because, as we know, our lives are dictated by digital channels now, and your website really should be the top front door that people visit when they try and find you digitally. Which again, because we don't have usually a high street branch of our CrossFit affiliate, that is the place they're going to find you. And Andy, you made a really good point, I think, on the last town hall, or somebody did, that one of the huge benefits of being a CrossFit affiliate is there are a lot of Google searches, SEO searches for the word CrossFit or CrossFit gym or gym in your area. If you don't have a website to drive people to, you are never going to appear in that traffic, and they will get directed to other CrossFit gyms locally or to other competitors. Even if you have an Instagram channel, Facebook channel, they're helpful, but you won't be able to generate the same SEO. And you don't need to be an SEO expert to generate that. You just need content online, and the website is the primary place for that. It also, in my opinion, makes everything through the marketing funnel much more effective. And it also drives a lot of discipline in how you. So when I think about doing something new with a brand or a new marketing strategy, the first thing I think is how do I disseminate this on the website and where do I put it in the website customer journey? And then everything else kind of falls out from there. Does that make sense? Did you want to add anything there, Andy? Have you got thoughts on that as well?
No, well, no, I just wanted to hear what your kind of viewpoint on it. I mean, I think me and Gareth use the analogy that Instagram's a shop window, and then the
Yeah,
website is actually taking action and come inside the shop. I
yeah.
think that's what we can kind of reflect. And then when it says 73% of small businesses aren't confident in their brand, is that because they just don't know how to track it, or they just don't have a clue what they're doing?
Well, I would say good question. That stat isn't drilled down any further than that in this forum that I went to. But in my personal experience, I'm a member of a couple of small business groups in Newbury, and I think it's because when you set up a small business, unless you have happened to have come from a background of sales or marketing, why would you know this stuff? Like it's like when I first started CrossFit, I didn't have the first clue about anything, coaching, anything. I had to learn, I had to get qualifications, I had to do my level 1 and 2. So I think it's mainly just a lack of knowledge because there's absolutely no reason a small business owner should have that knowledge, and to then educate yourself and find the time to do that with the myriad of information that's out there is just really hard. It's like everything, isn't it? We do it's a time versus priority situation. So, yeah, so basically just one more slide kind of framing up the competition. So again, really important because you've got kind of the global brand landscape, which we don't need to worry about too much, but in the local landscape, it is so super competitive. Every time I'm online or in town in Newbury, there is a new gym, personal trainer, running club, boot camp, something setting up. F45 was the latest. Interestingly, it didn't last in Newbury. But they come, they go, they stay. Um, there's probably a CrossFit box jump down the road, and hopefully you've got a good relationship with them, but they are there and they are, like it or not, a competitor. Um, so your brand not has to only reach people, it's also got to convey very quickly what they can get from you that they can't get from down the road because ultimately they're all offering fitness and will all have their own versions. So I think going through the kind of exercise that I'm going to suggest next is an excellent way, if you haven't already, of really creating again some differentiation against these brands, some of which are stronger than others and some of which are very, very cheap. So we're into the main agenda now. I'm not going to read through this. I've talked about what we're going to do, but I'm going to try and take each of these bullet points in turn, and sort of tick them off, and then we can again have that question and answer at the end, hopefully, and discussion. So this is the bit that I'm the most passionate about, and it's the bit where even in some of the really large businesses I've worked in, they've done a crap job of getting this right. And it's really, really important. So mission, vision, values, they are the threads that should unite your entire brand and messaging and that you can stay super consistent with. And as you can tell, like consistency is my main kind of message, really. Everything should have the same threads running through it. And if you can get clear on them, you will be ahead, as I say, of most of the business that I've worked in, because people don't do this very well. They get very self-focused and don't really think about their customers and don't really allocate enough time to it. So you might have already, with your team, or perhaps just with the founders or your investors and your owners, run through this and kind of workshopped it. If you haven't, I would say that's the best way to try and get this clear. It's actually a really fun thing to do to spend like a couple of hours, half a day with the team, to kind of brainstorm this and refine it. And I have got, and Andy and Gareth, if you want me to, I've got kind of a template for doing that I use with some of my customers because I'm a marketing consultant on the side. Um, it's a really, really great exercise and it will build it's a team building exercise. It'll get your coaches really engaged with your mission and it'll also root out, if you have them, and hopefully you don't, any coaches that are not really bought in because this stuff is what they should all be aspiring to convey every day themselves as well. Because this in the businesses that we run, this cannot just be about words on a page. It has to be what the coaches and owners live and breathe every day as well. It can feel really uncomfortable doing it because because it just does. But it's just so important. So yeah, I would workshop for sort of half a day, maybe less. It depends on how much you've done this, but you can always go back to it. First of all, what is our mission? So why do we exist? Why did we open our doors? Not just kind of because we wanted to run the gym better than our predecessors, which might be some of our reasoning. Not just because we love CrossFit and we want to train, but why did we decide to go into this quite difficult but really wonderful job that we all do and run the business that we run? And that might start as quite a lot of reasons, but what you're looking to do is distill it down to kind of one mission statement, ideally, if you can. And then there's kind of a vision that is useful to underpin that as well, in my opinion, which is more like your strategy and where you want to be in 3 to 5 years. So it helps stop you from just existing in the day to day and thinking, have we retained that member that came in for a trial? Can we get the next kind of month of revenue over the line? There's got to be a bigger picture, I think, because it can be a very soul destroying job at certain times and a wonderful job at others. So where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years, not just for our team, but also for the gym and the people that we serve? And again, there might be a multitude of reasons, but we're trying to sort of drill it down to a few. And then values is also helpful, I think. They kind of underpin the mission and vision. They might not be something that you talk about to other people. They might be more internal to your team. But that's all about what are the behaviors that you and your team can stand behind? What do you really care about? And what will you think every day? And what can you talk about at every team meeting that is going to, again, allow you to live and breathe your brand? So I'm going to use myself just as an example because it's easiest. But our vision, one thing that I think a lot of gyms do is that their vision is often to be the best CrossFit gym. Um, I would try and stay away from that because it's just so generic and it's almost certainly what another half a dozen gyms in your town are going to be saying. So our vision is built around being the most inclusive gym in the area because we put a lot behind our diversity and inclusion, and that's something that we want to work on. Our values are excellence in coaching, community, and competition. And that links in to the next slide, which is about audience. And our mission, I'm going to have to look this one up because I always get the wording wrong.
Jeannie, on the vision, would you have one per stakeholder within the business so you would have a vision for the owner, vision for the business, vision for the clients?
Good question. You could do. I'd certainly say you definitely need one that's consistent across ownership and coaches, probably. You don't want to be sort of fragmented across that. But yeah, definitely the vision is definitely more for the owners and the kind of overall business. I think it's the mission that is more about the clients. But yeah, definitely, I think, Andy, having a line item in your vision that is really focused on your customers is super important. Because again, the first time I did this exercise for a small business and in my large businesses, I went sort of really internally focused and thought about me. And actually, you need to put your clients at the heart of it. So I'd say that's a pretty good idea, actually. Yeah, and just to finish off, so our mission is to enable everyone, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, or fitness level, to get fitter, healthier, and happier by joining our gym. Now, the word everyone in my mission statement is slightly controversial, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But there are reasons that I've used it, again, that I'll come on to. Generally, I don't like really generic mission statements, but again, because CrossFit is the way it is and because of where we compete, I think we have to be quite clever about how we define our audiences. So anyway, I'll just pause on that because we're going on to that next. But that's mission, vision, and values. And like I say, if you don't take anything else away, if you haven't done that exercise, I would really recommend that you do it. It's super enlightening, and it might take you a little while to hone those down if you don't have them already, but it's well worth it.
Anecdotally for Dragon, okay, so we're coming into our 16th year. I did this exercise back in 2020 with someone, and I mentioned it to you in when we first met, Jeannie, who works in branding, and it gave
Yeah.
me a clear direction and exactly where I needed to go. And the last 5 years with the affiliate, I don't need to go, but they've been the best 5 years ever because
Okay, yeah, go on.
so just for those of us who might be on the call or listening in, you'll be, oh, this is a bit, wishy-washy. It's not. This is why these massive brands do it because it gives them a clear direction. And I just think as small business operators, it's definitely something me and Gareth would love to have that conversation with each and every single one of you, when we have those conversations. What is your mission? What's the vision? Where's your values? Okay, and like, how can we help and support? So, sorry, just wanted to butt in there as always.
No, that's really helpful, Andy. Andy, thank you. And it can feel a bit, like I say, feel a bit weird doing it, but it really is worth it. And again, if anybody's local or close-ish to me or wanted to have a follow-up call, I'd be happy to do that to see if I can help in any way. But the template that I've got is quite straightforward. And once you get going, it's quite fun. Okay, so moving on from that, the other kind of element, again, I've banged on about it already, that I think is super important is consistency. It's really easy when you're in full control and command of your brand and your marketing to kind of try and mix things up quite often. And although it's good to have a diverse range of campaigns and think about your channels and all that sort of thing, having a consistent visual identity and a consistent tone of voice is absolutely critical, because again, it really drives that recognition and it also demonstrates to people that you are professional, but also that what they see in one place is what they're going to see in another place and what they're going to get in person. And again, that is why the mission, vision, and values is so important because, and this has happened to me, I used to travel a lot for work and I'd do a lot of drop-ins. And quite often I'd visit a gym online and it would be, we'll give you a warm welcome. We've got excellent standards of coaching and we are, completely community orientated. And then I'd walk in and the coach wouldn't even say hello to me, even though I was a drop in, and I wouldn't get a single coaching cue through the session because I vaguely knew what I was doing. So the experience of visiting them online and visiting them in person was completely different. That's, something we really want to try and avoid. And the way to start again is to get consistent in all your brand and marketing channels, and then flow it through that mission, vision, and values. So I've mentioned logo, like absolute bare minimum, professionally designed, high quality, all the right high resolution formats to make sure it can be put in places by partners, etc., and look great. And ideally unique and reflective of your own gym. Try to avoid refreshing your logo with ChatGPT. It will not do a great job. It's much better to invest a little bit in a designer who will understand the brief or do it a different way. And then I would also recommend kind of backing up that investment. Again, if you haven't got it already, you may well with a really simple set of brand guidelines. So they don't have to be fancy, but I just got a designer friend of mine to make sure that we were using consistent color palette, fonts, logos, and then paired that with a language guide, which is a really simple framework that I just refer to when I'm creating any new content to make sure it always sounds the same. And again, to avoid that kind of sometimes when you're trying to talk to different audiences, you use a slightly different tone of voice or you integrate sort of different language or try something new in terms of sounding a little bit more exciting. It can work occasionally, but really you need to stay consistent in the way that you talk to people. And again, that helps when it comes to the gym in person. And an example of that. So I very specifically in my language guide reminded myself and wrote down, it sounds ridiculous, no swearing. And the reason I did that is because I'm quite sweary. And in the gym, for most of my members, it wouldn't be a problem. I obviously wouldn't swear at them. But the odd swear word wouldn't bother them. But I know that I've got a handful of members that really doesn't work for. I'm obviously not going to use swear words in my content externally, but by having it in my language guide, it just means that I remind myself regularly and my team that actually, although it's almost a part of my personal brand to be occasionally a bit sweary, I need to make sure that I separate that from the brand that I'm leading from a business perspective. It's a silly example, but you see what I'm saying around language. So, yeah, so again, I think having those basics in place when it comes to making sure that you've got consistency will just help every single time, and it makes things a lot quicker as well as you go along. Because again, I use coaching, community, competition, my three values to kind of be the threads that run through all of my content, and then work off there with the language guide and brand becomes a lot easier when it's consistent because you just go into Canva or whatever tool you use and everything's there and you can kind of replicate much more easily as well. So I'm spending about half the time that I was at the beginning creating content because I just rip myself off most of the time now. Okay, how am I doing for time? Okay, great. So I just wanted to touch on audiences. And again, this is something that I'd love to have a bit of a conversation about at the end because it's the one that that I struggle with the most, I guess. There's a lot of advice that you get, I think, when you start your affiliate, that talks about making sure that you're really clear on who your target audiences are and that you can't be everything to everyone. And I agree with that broadly. I completely agree with that broadly. However, in a market as competitive as fitness and even in CrossFit specifically, certainly with the fitness market in Newbury, I don't think that I could get away with saying I'm only going to try and attract elite or competitive CrossFit athletes who want to be really focused on a very specific structured program that allows for progression, that builds people up for competitions in the open, that improves them, and that buys into all the philosophies that we kind of talk about. But that is how I want to run my gym, right? I don't want to, I want to run it like that, but I don't think that I can just solely market to the people for whom that would be the clear value proposition that got them through the door. So my kind of compromise on that is I I base my values around the things that are absolute red lines. So what can I almost not tolerate? Who do I not want to be part of my community? Well, I don't want anybody to be part of the community that's not interested in coaching, because if you don't want to be coached, why come to a CrossFit gym? And I want them to be interested in high quality coaching, excellence in coaching, because I invest in my team. And, let's be honest, there is an element of competition, whether it's against yourself or against the clock or against others. Otherwise, why do we log our scores? And we always do that in my gym. So there has to be an acknowledgement that people, want to be a little bit competitive and make themselves better. And then community is the absolute heart of everything we do. And my previous owner built an amazing community. So I chose those words and then everything that underpins them to make sure that no matter what kind of niche or demographic people come to me through, they are the non-negotiables that they know they're going to get. And all of my marketing and brand kind of conveys that in some way. And it means that I can then look and say, I have got some niches, like, again, partly because the demographic in Newbury, I've got a lot of parents and busy professionals who want to get better, but they don't have that much time. I've got more masters athletes than I have young athletes. I don't have a lot of students in Newbury. We have CrossFit Kids, but there's a bit of a gulf from 14 to 25. And then the other two are just examples. But basically, once I look at those niches and who's coming through the doors based on what I've built, I can then just double check that whenever I'm creating new brand ideas or marketing ideas, I can connect them back to those audiences and make sure that I'm not going to switch them off if I am, launching a new service or a new initiative, or I'm creating a new workshop or whatever it may be. So I think this is really hard in CrossFit and in the fitness industry, but I would definitely look at who your key audiences are, sketch them out, create a bit of a profile of each one, and think about what they want, what they don't want, what turns them on in the gym, what turns them off, and then just sort of check back on those every now and then, and are we serving them, because they're the most important people to us. Okay, I'm just going to touch on this really briefly because it's a whole different webinar in itself, I think. And again, it's kind of easier to go through this exercise if you've got mission, vision, and values. But the value proposition really is kind of your service offering. It's what you're then saying to people, this is what we're going to offer you. And it's really, really hard to distill it into a single sentence or a single kind of or a very high level message, but it's well worth doing, because again, when I set up in August, one of my kind of observations from previous owner, he'd built an amazing community, but I didn't think he was offering enough. We weren't doing kids classes. We weren't doing very many master classes or workshops. We weren't selling much merchandise. There were lots of opportunities, and I ran a survey to the members and said, what would you guys actually like? And they came back with literally all those ideas and about 65 more. And anybody who's been through this exercise will know people saying they want something is not the same as them actually turning up and paying their money for that thing. And that's not to say that you shouldn't survey people, because it's obviously really helpful. But you also, I think I got a bit excited, and actually what I learned quite quickly was just pick off one thing that is going to be in addition to the core thing that you're selling and the core message of value that you have. launch it, test it, and then, if it works, great, wrap it into the value proposition. If not, move on to the next thing. So I think it's probably worth, again, as part of that exercise for mission and vision and values, test your value proposition. Can you distill it into one sentence? What is that sentence? And then does that work for all of your target audiences? If they were reading that on the back of a bus on the way home, would it make them think, oh, actually, yeah, I want to visit this gym? We could talk loads more about that, but again, it's probably a topic for a whole different webinar. Okay. This is where I might be really teaching you to suck eggs, guys, if I'm not already. So apologies if I am. Um, but again, these are kind of based on learnings that I've had since August, even as somebody who thought that they knew what they were doing on this stuff. Um, so first of all, without a big marketing team, it takes a lot longer to do stuff than I ever expected. So what I've started to discipline myself on is having an hour per week that's not about necessarily like executing on like Canva campaigns or like trying to find it or speaking to a content creator or whatever it might be, but it's more about giving myself the time and space to have ideas and then execute on them in kind of a window. And it doesn't mean I only spend an hour on brand a week, but it just keeps me honest in kicking new things off and thinking about it. So the ideas on the left are just kind of what you might do with the hour. They all obviously take a lot more effort to actually execute, but they are just or some of them do, but they are just ways of making sure that you are always thinking about the next idea that's going to bring your brand to life. And then the three things that I think I kind of have learned that need to be done regularly and often to really grow your brand. First of all, is establishing or fixing the basics. So what I already talked about in terms of making sure that all of your online presences, Instagram, Facebook, your Google business profile, which often is neglected, I forgot to do that for a while, your website and your website copy, make them consistent, make them look really good, make them sound really good, and then review each of them regularly to make sure they stay up to date and fresh. It's super easy to forget to update that stuff, and it's really important when people visit you online that they're right. I'd also sort of say that if you're going to invest in one aspect of your visual brand, getting some good photography done is probably the most important thing. I don't really think it's necessary to have perfectly curated Instagram reels and video content and all that sort of thing. If you can afford it and you've got a content creator or you can do it yourself, that's brilliant. But actually, there's a lot of research around that shows that sort of more organic slash sort of content that people can tell is real, whether it is professionally curated or not, is quite powerful. But I do think that with photographs, I just found a local photographer who wanted to pick up some practice basically, and he also wanted to take some shots in the gym of a couple of our athletes. So in return, he came to three of our events and took a load of photos, and I just use them for absolutely everything now. So again, probably sucking eggs, but that's really helpful.
No, just to step in here, Gareth, please remind me of the conversation and who it was with. I can't remember, but a gym owner said that probably once a quarter they'll hire a photographer to come in, or it may be someone within their community. They would pay them for like an afternoon, and then they would just absolutely take as many photos as possible, do all the editing, etc., and that gives them a bank of content then for the next quarter. And it's something that we've done at Dragon just by listening to that. I was like, oh yeah, I was like, makes sense. So we did it Monday last week. And so like we've got now like 50, 60 photos, which we can call on of our members, which are edited to a higher, no, better than what we could do. There we are.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That's exactly it. And I'm going to have to get mine redone shortly because well, it's quite useful to do anyway because obviously members come and go and you want to make sure that you've always featuring. They love it as well, as long as they've not said they don't want to be in photos. They absolutely love seeing their faces all over Instagram and the website, most of them. But I'm having a wall painted and it'll change the way the gym looks quite significantly. So I'll need some new ones then. Again, it needs to stay, relatively up to date, but once every 6 months, once every year should be absolutely fine if that's the budget. Okay, collaboration. So I think this is super important. So Partnerships are a great way to amplify your brand without, again, spending a fortune. I don't necessarily mean sponsoring other clubs or people or whatever, but just finding local physios, sports clubs, workplaces who you know will be interested in your values or where there's mutual benefit is massively helpful. So an example of that, I've just done a schools program with a local school in Newbury. They wanted to send some of their kids from their sort of talented athletes program to do a 6-week course with one of our kids coaches. So they've been in, and I just created a reel off the back of the partnership, and posted it. And obviously the pet it's a private school, right? So there's some quite, there's parents with a lot of reach in that group. They're people who never would have, I never would have connected the brand with otherwise. But they've all obviously watched that reel because Thorngrove shared it and talked about the partnership we have. The school shared it and talked about the partnership we have. And so that grew my Instagram following quite significantly, but it's also opened a number of other conversations around collaboration with local schools. So again, it's just an example. I'm sure you'll all have them, but they are, I think, the best value way of amplifying your brand through partnerships. And then finally, it sounds really obvious, but members seem to really love it when you splatter their faces everywhere. So they really are your strongest asset again, because we don't have affiliates generally on the high street, and because of our budgets and our busyness, your community is absolutely the most powerful retention and acquisition tool that you've got, and the most powerful advocates for your brand. So there's a ton of stuff you can do, and you're probably doing them. But again, Andy, I know you're absolutely zealous about the Bring a Friend Thursday, and you're right. I ran a referral scheme through January, which was based around giving a gift voucher for Christmas to friends, and it signed me up 23 members in January, which is way more successful than I thought it'd be. So I'll be doing Bring a Friend forever now, because it's along the same lines basically. So they're kind of the things that I would say are critical, but there's a thousand other ideas, and again, I'd love to hear some of yours when I've finished talking. So the last point I wanted to make, and again, it's one that I've kind of thought about a lot since I took over an affiliate, since I owned an affiliate, is how do you leverage the CrossFit brand while creating a unique identity? Because whilst the CrossFit brand is massively valuable in so many ways, I don't think it's enough to rely on it to give you an identity that will cut through, especially because, like, in my head, everybody knows what CrossFit is, but actually it's still a very small proportion of the overall population who actually do. So it's really important to make sure that you have your own identity as a fitness facility and as a community where you leverage the CrossFit brand, but do your own thing, and create your own identity as well. So I think CrossFit, the advantages there, I already mentioned that just from a channel boost perspective, SEO, Google search, especially for drop-ins, if you're in a larger city where you get a lot of drop-ins, the CrossFit brand is so, so important. And in amongst the community of people who do know what CrossFit is, it gives enormous credibility and recognition as long as you're kind of adhering to the right coaching standards, etc. It also obviously when you go through that exercise of doing your mission, vision, and values, it's actually a lot easier to do it as a CrossFit affiliate, I think, than as a sort of a non-affiliated fitness facility, because a lot of the kind of the themes that you are signing up to are already there. And so it's likely, again, coaching, community, and competition, my values are essentially, all tied very closely to the CrossFit methodology. And also, obviously we get resources, campaign assets, and they can be helpful. I've been using the ones for the Open, and they've saved me a lot of time when it comes to making sure that I can create content, although I have adjusted them again to make sure that they reflect our tone of voice and how we're going to run the Open. That's super easy to do, and it's not diluting the messaging in any way. So that kind of, in my view, is what CrossFit gives. I'm sure people will be able to rattle off a lot more, but the important bit is then what do our own brands add? Well, they add the local element. That's really important. So we know our local areas, we know how many other gyms are around, we know what they are offering, and what people want and need, what our demographics look like. We are reaching out to specific audiences, back to the point I made earlier. So how do we make sure that, again, in Newbury, to give an example, first of all, there's a CrossFit gym down the road. I'm good friends with the owners. We get on really well. I don't know if on the call. Hi, Darcy and Charlie, if you are. But we need to be aware of each other and our target audience. We do serve slightly different people. Their gym is much bigger and shinier than mine. But I always have that in mind when I'm thinking about how I grow my brands. I'm not looking to go into direct competition with those guys. I'm just looking to make sure that I am adding my own unique personality to CrossFit to make sure that people understand why they might come to me, why they might go to the gym down the road, etc. Culture and experience, again, when people walk into your gym, it should feel like a CrossFit facility, but it should feel like your gym as well. And then new ideas and initiatives, I think that's really important. So, we we now run a lot of engine room classes, which are our kind of high rock style, sort of more cardio based stuff. We do dedicated weightlifting. It's all CrossFit adjacent, right? And it all helps people as CrossFit athletes, but it also gives us other hooks to draw people in if they don't necessarily come straight for CrossFit. And interestingly, that actually has resonated most. We've had quite a lot of women my age joining recently, and what they've Googled actually is for weightlifting because they have read all the recent, data and publicity around needing to stay strong after 40. And they don't know what CrossFit is, but they come for the weightlifting and they stay for everything else. Okay, so final just point that I wanted to make as well, that I think is really important is I think it's worth always being conscious of how much your brand is reflecting you as the owner or head coach or co-owner or whatever it may be, and how much you want it to, and those two things are slightly different. So there's no right answer to this, but it is really important. So again, I guess Johnny at 179 is a good example for this. If you follow 179 and Dragon, actually, Andy, you guys are, front and center of a lot of the content that you create. I'm very connected to your gyms. And that is, if I were you guys, that's exactly what I'd do because you've got, tons of years of experience, huge successful affiliates. You are so connected with the CrossFit methodology. So it really, really works. It wouldn't work for me because I've only owned a CrossFit gym since August. I don't, I've done 7 years of like being part of competitions and stuff, but it's just not the same. And so I don't tend to use myself as in a lot of my content. In fact, I don't use myself in any of it, but that's not because I don't want to be in front of the camera. I don't think it's the right thing. It's just not the right thing for my gym at the moment. However, my personality is kind of stamped all over, the way that I run things. And it will be because this is why we all, take on affiliates. So, and that is not a bad thing at all. It should be that way, but it just means you always need to be thinking and conscious of not just the way you present yourself as a leader and in the gym, but, how much you actually want to connect yourself with that personality, particularly if you have co-owners or a large coaching team or whatever it may be, and how much you use them as well. Like I see my coaches as one of my biggest assets. I'm not using them enough at the moment. I'm going to be doing coach profiles and highlighting their qualifications and their personalities, but that's kind of the next stage of my brand strategy. So just always worth thinking about that, and integrating it into your brand strategy as you go forward. Okay, so 45 minutes, that's quite good for me. Normally I bang on about this stuff for longer. So I think that covers all the main points. As I say, I do have like follow-up sort of content and thoughts around all of this, which I'm very happy to share if it's appropriate. But if I could kind of, I guess the key things for me and the ideas hopefully that you can take away are running that workshop, even if you've done it before, redefining your mission, vision, values, value proposition, making sure you've got those core consistency related assets and tools in place. And then even if you're not a brand or marketer, find one to lean on. You might have one in your community, or use your own experience because you've been doing it now for 5, 10, however many years, and you can kind of just carve out that time and collaborate with partners or other gyms in the area, even potentially, or members of this call, whatever it might be, to really allocate time to it. Because I just feel like what I've learned since August is that it is an incredibly competitive industry. It's getting more competitive, and this is genuinely something that you can differentiate with, especially as a CrossFit affiliate. So hopefully that's given some good ideas and food for thought. But like I say, Andy, Gareth, I don't know if anything's come in, but I'd welcome your views or anybody else's as well.
No, it's been fantastic actually. I think it's gives us something outside of the routine of lead generation and teaching people how to squat, right? And as leaders within our own small businesses, what I kind of like caught on there is that you're right. It's trying to find I guess, as you said, the value of whether that brand aligns with what you want your affiliate to be, you are right in, I guess, in terms of the appraisal of Dragon. It's like when I went through the exercise, it's basically, well, what does Dragon kind of what I want it to be for the people? And that's what we basically have tried to do on that time. So yeah, I mean, what is there any questions first and foremost, right? Because obviously I want to spend this time.
I have
Um,
one.
go for it, Sarah.
Fellow marketeer. I'm
Right.
from the corporate world as well. So I came in to help probably about 5 years ago and got stuck. He's not be able to get rid of me. So we've done a lot of the stuff, we've done our brand values and they're actually pinned on our Instagram page and stuff like that. The gym up the road, we're not very friendly with. Well, we were, and then they got a new owner. And
Yeah.
he doesn't like us at all. And
Yeah.
he has said he's determined to shut us down. And
Oh, lovely.
he's trying his best. He's trying his best. And everything that we've done, like we know what our brand values are. We are the epitome of, have you seen Dodgeball? We are average
Yeah.
Joes. And we love that. We love that we are average Joes. We hold on to the fact that they are Globo Gym, Ben Stiller, and we are average Joe. But because we've been doing so well with that, he wants a piece of that pie now. So
Mhm.
everything that he's doing is about we're for everyone. We know that's bullshit. I know, sorry, we don't like swearing, but I'm a sweary one as well.
Mhm.
We know that that's not true because they come from them to us, and they're like, oh, it's not like. And I know, but how do we get our message across? More so, he's got all the paid advertising in the local shopping centre. He's got billboards outside Asda, like saying that we are all about community. And it's like, we know you're not. We know you're not. But I keep saying to Paul, I do a lot of like motivational reading and stuff. I've just finished the Let Them theory, which is awesome. If you've not read it or listened to it, read it. It's great. Mel Gibbons is awesome. But I'm trying to let them, but it's really, really hard when they're kind of trying to steal your thunder and it's not true. And I don't know. What are your thoughts?
God, that's really hard. I'm sure again, Andy and Gareth will have some. That's God, that's an awful situation. So
Yeah.
interestingly, when the gym down the road set up under ownership like 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when it wasn't me, it was a predecessor, but it was messy. And actually, at that point, they did some things that they shouldn't have done, and it's only because there's new ownership now that we all get on super well. But at the time, I think Grant was going through a similar kind of headache because I think we knew when we were thinking about it rationally that by staying consistent with what we did and the messaging that we were putting out, that over time, that would be a winning strategy because for the same reasons, really, because we were doing all the things that we could do well. This scenario, it sounds more challenging because there's clearly some deep pockets there going on with this gym down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. He might be on the call. I don't know. I'd tell it to his face anyway. There's a lot of money being thrown at it that's not been
Yeah,
gathered from good places. So he's
yeah,
got like all the photography, all the paid advertising, and he's the flashy new website and everything. So
yeah,
a lot of money's been like thrown at it to kind of
yeah.
make them bigger. And he's quite well known in the
Well,
CrossFit
Right.
community.
just to step in regards to look, Cardiff's a fairly competitive market, in similar kind of circumstances and what have you, right? And what I have found has worked phenomenally well is just know who you are and be consistent with it. And something like bring a friend is the perfect way to do that because then people can come in and experience it. And if they're doing CrossFit elsewhere and then they decide to go and try it out somewhere else and they have a better time, then good job on you.
Yeah,
Do
we got
you
30,
see-
30 new members from Bring a Friend back in
yeah.
September.
Oh,
So.
good.
So, and this is the thing, right? Like, just on
And
this.
they didn't bring a friend as well. Like the following month, it's like, okay. I mean, they say imitation is the highest form of flattery. So when we see, we've got a class called X, and then they do a class called X, and we did High Rocks, and they now do High Rocks. It's like, oh my God, just let us be us. But great that they're copying us, but they're copying us and then spending 20 grand on 10
Yeah.
ski ergs. And it's like, I haven't got 20 grand to spend on ski ergs.
Yeah,
It's
Go on.
I think I've been in a very similar position in Birmingham, same as Andy in Cardiff. The thing I would challenge you, and I know it's easier said than done, is try to ignore what they're doing and focus on you and your consistency. So off the bat, I would challenge you to take those 30 new members you've got and get them all to give you a Google review. You've got 5 stars, 70 reviews. You've done a fantastic job at replying to them all. You're dropping all the right words into your Google review replies, like, oh, thanks for trying CrossFit with Sutton with me at CrossFit Hexus. Can we go on the offense, not necessarily trying to throw money at things or stressing about what they're doing, but sing your praises and get your members to sing your praises even more? I think will then double down on the fact that that's you, that's what you do, and kind of ignore what they do, if that makes sense.
yeah, we're trying really
It's
hard.
really, it must be really hard. I mean, I was going to say exactly the same thing on consistency and positivity, because again, it's super easy, isn't it, to get dragged into a rate like you sort of think, well, I'll do a clever campaign that kind of claps back a little bit of that, but it's never the right thing to do because
Yeah,
it's
we're ignoring that. I mean,
exactly,
Paul would be all
yeah,
over it, but I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, again, marketing experience. The only other thing that I would say, and you'll know this already as well, is wherever that investment is coming from, like you say, if they're backed by investors who have put their money into this stuff and it's not paying off, that will come to haunt them pretty quickly. But until then, yeah, unfortunately, I think consistency, positivity, and keeping doing all the right things, which you obviously are.
What I think is really good in terms of the values, is that once you've got them down, is to keep, as you said, keep repeating it within your team because staffing's a really big thing, right? And they're a big reflection of your business. And and just by it having up in front of me, it really made me realize I don't do it enough, right? And my staff are great, but I also have to remind them that it's my way. I don't know. I don't mean that in the. Do you know what I mean? It's like these are my values. I understand that you want to be like a full-time coach and you've come with these other expectations and you're great at what you do, but there's certain things which don't align with what I want to do. And it's nice as a little bit of a reminder because they can kind of. Do you see what I mean? So it's like that's a really good one on how to get that sort of to trickle down. And just that's just a change ever so slightly from a consistency standpoint in using the branding to get consistency delivered in each one of your classes because that is the experience, as you said, in terms of once people come in, does it align with what they're seeing online? Does it align with their experience when they walk in the door? So if it is friendly, if you are marketing in terms of like you got great coaches and the coaches really spend the time, make sure they do. I mean, the coaches have to be aware of that as well. So getting the first part of this together and just getting it done, right? And it'd be, as you said, you might think that you're teaching people to suck eggs. Trust me. Let's just call it 50-50. 50% of gyms you would be, and then 50%, maybe not, right? Because in terms of that mission, I guarantee the vast majority of us, or 99% of us, that did it for the same reasons, right? Is that we wanted to positively impact people's lives through CrossFit, right? Because that's what's happened to us. I mean, every conversation that we have is the same thing. When it gets down to the nitty gritty of what that looks like to you, I think that's important, right? Would you agree with that, Jeannie?
Yeah, definitely. And I've just looked at the website for your gym, Sarah, and I mean it's great. It's got all the consistency. So yeah, as long as it's trickling down, and it sounds like it is, because like you say, if people have walked in from the other gym and said it's not like it, it's not like they say it is.
say what it says on the tin over no,
Yeah, exactly. They
but how
wouldn't.
do we get more of that? How do we get the word out more? Because they've got paid people doing all their Instagram and they post 3 times a day, and it's just like I just need to get them in the door. Once they're in, they stay. But I mean,
Yeah,
we're to the point now where our class are full and stuff, and it's awesome. We know we're doing a good job,
yeah.
and I just need to just carry on. I think it's a mindset thing. I did some mindset stuff actually with best hour of the day, and which was great, but I'm still a sucker for negative Nelly. I am.
Yeah. Unfortunately, again, like generating a lot of leads at the top of the funnel, it is usually like investment in expensive channels, expensive advertising channels. They get that, but the member stuff that you're doing again is exactly right. They are your strongest channel, and just try and encourage the owner to focus on retention rather than acquisition. Like obviously, you need new people coming in, but that other gym sounds like it'll become an acquisition
On,
channel
on the
as well.
on the business side of affiliates, what I can tell you is that length of engagement is the biggest marker.
Yeah,
Okay. So yeah, we do want leads, but that does not determine long-term success. That's what we've kind of like a key metric. It is a part, and and CrossFit gyms aren't particularly great.
Our arm's about 3 years, so we're,
All right. So again, we're slightly we're above average probably by
yeah,
about 12 months, right? So again, it's a slow burning one. And that's the biggest thing, right?
yeah,
Your clients might take longer to actually get into that. And then once they're in, they're there for a long time.
yeah,
Versus, let's say, someone who comes in for a free lead and then gets sold on to something else, and they're like, well, I kind of this isn't what I'm after. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of those things. Farron McKay from Virtuous Coaching says this as well, right? We're all CrossFit, right? That's like a pizza, yeah. And then we just put our own flavor toppings on it, right? So, mine might be Hawaiian. It's not for everyone's taste, right? But I love a Hawaiian pizza, right? But some people might like something like a Diavolo, something a bit spicier, right? That's when they go down to 179. That's what me and Johnny, talk about all the time. It's like, well, your program is boring. But I'm like, hey, that's my people, right? So it's just having those things and those differences, right? Because people will eventually find what they're looking for, specifically within that CrossFit space. So that's and again, that's just anecdotally from the conversations me and Gareth have, and just being in the space, for I guess a significant amount of time now, right? Not easy, I know, but just keep hitting the consistency part, right? Because that's what people are looking for in terms of the reliability. And as I always say to people when we get pushed back on bring a friend, right? It's like, oh, bring a friend didn't work for us. Okay, tell me about it. Cool. All right, so you did it the once, did you? Yeah. Nothing's going to work once, is it? And it's again, it's the consistency drill, right? It's the consistency drill, just banging it in there. Right, Jeannie, we're running out of time. All right,
yeah,
it's been really great. What we would love is that if we can just get those slides and then we can disseminate that out, just send
yeah,
them into Gareth and we can pop that in a newsletter. And then I'll have a conversation with you in regards to maybe getting you on in like kind of 6 months time, maybe take
yeah.
you through this. All right. But if you do have any questions, team, what I'd love you to do is just email me and Gareth, and then we can just pass them on to Jeannie. Right. Apologies if we haven't been able to answer it. We are tight on time now. Is that cool?
That's perfect. Thanks so much for joining, everyone. I hope it's been useful, and we'll speak again, hopefully.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. All the
Thanks.
best.
Good luck, Sarah.